What's happening, fishing friends? Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to go over my top 5 bank fishing lures for spring. You know, spring is an awesome time for bank fishermen because you can get to places that you really can't get to in the spring and summer once the weeds and trees and all that stuff grows up. You can access a lot of places that you just normally can't get to. Not to mention for spring, the fish are moving up shallow. They're going to be looking to spawn, so oftentimes you'll see bass boats right on the spots where you're fishing from the bank because that's where a lot of them are. Not always, you know, you've got primary points, secondary points, fish moving out. We can get out, it's a whole different video. But today we're going to go over my top 5 bank lures. So enough yapping, let's get started. Okay, the first lure up here, listen, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I have to go with the trusty Ned Rig. Now, specifically for you bank anglers, if you've not tried them yet, I'll leave a number of these linked below, but an EWG Ned Rig head, you can see you can rig this weedless, and for bank fishing, this has changed Ned Rigs for me. I mean, I don't get hung up nearly as much. If you're fishing big chunk rock and stuff, you're going to get hung up. It's inevitable, but I would say my hang up ratio has gone down. I don't know, 80%, that's a random number. It's gone down a lot. And I know I've got people groaning saying, oh, the Ned Rig stinks, but listen, hear me out. Water temps are still cold, mid-high 40s, maybe low 50s here if we finally get a warm stretch. We're supposed to get snow. But I like moving up to something just a little bit bigger and crawling it slow. So something like this, the Nico Ned Zone, 4.25 inches, using like a 4-inch Yum Dinger. Something with just a little bit more bulk to it. I've honestly been having more success with, or I shouldn't say that. I've been going to more, and I found that I kind of like that for the way I fish because people think Ned Rig fishing has to be super slow. You're just sitting there and dragging it. It's painful. Listen, you can hop it, you can drag it. I'll link a video at the end that goes over all this. I just did a spring Ned Rig fishing video for cold water right now into spawn. It's an amazing technique that catches tons of bass. Catches size, catches numbers. It's a fun way to catch them if you're out on the bank. The other cool thing is they're always coming out with new stuff to try. So these are the, what are they? Ned BLTs. These are those Crush City ones I just showed in the video that I did. But I put one of those on one of these VMC heads. You can see it's a swiveling head. It's not, you know, directly connected. Just coming out with new stuff for folks to try. It's always fun to experiment. So find what works for you. Again, I'll leave that video linked at the end where I really go in depth on Ned Rig fishing and it'll cover that. So bait 2. I am going with a good old suspending jerkbait or something that's really slow falling. Now, if you're a bank angler, a floating jerkbait can be awesome, but in the spring like this, like I said, I may be right at 50. Let's say 50 degrees right now for water, maybe a little under. I don't want something that's going to float and move. I want it to just sit there if I can. If I can get a suspending jerkbait, meaning after I work it, it just sits there and freezes in the water, that's what I want. Or something that's just going to ever so slowly fall down to those fish because I want to keep it above them. I want them to come up after it. I don't want it to be way under them and them have to go chase it and stuff. Another thing is with spring in the Midwest, we have tons of temperature swings. We were, you know, a week and a half ago, almost 80 degrees. Now we're supposed to be 40 again 2 weeks later. So it's crazy. But those cold fronts will often push back the bass farther. So if they were, you know, coming up to those primary points, starting to move back to those secondary points, getting ready to spawn, you know, later, you get a big cold front like that, it might push them back out farther, back out to a little bit deeper water. And a suspending jerkbait, just like this, also one that you just saw recently, is a perfect way to target them. There's a ton of really good brands out there. You've seen me fish the Berkley Stunna, one of my favorites over the past few years. The I'm a Flits have been one that you've seen me use. I really like those. They do have lighter hooks, smaller hooks, so you can't use too powerful a gear on them. The 6th Sense Provoke is a really good one. There's a ton of good ones out there. Find one that you like, but I really try to go after that suspending jerkbait that's just going to sit there and stall. Now I'm looking for like a 6-ish foot diver. I'm not going with one with a really big bill on it, getting crazy down deep, because when I cast out to deeper water and I'm working that jerkbait back, it gets down to that good range, and then I'm going to end up hitting, you know, whatever I'm at, depending on how the slope is. If I can find like a street drop off, that's the best for a jerkbait. But a lot of the places you could find bank fishing are going to kind of have, you know, a gradual drop off. So it's different working a bait out deep and bringing it in shallow, as if you were on a boat casting out shallow and working it back, you don't have anything to worry about. So I tend to go with a 6-foot diver, and in the cold weather like this, I'm going with just a quick pop, pop. Not too hard. I'm not, you know, ripping that as hard as I can, like in the spring or in the summer, you know, when fish are really active after post spawn, they're targeting fish, or you've got fish offshore chasing bait. Just a, you know, a light pop, pop, and then let it sit for maybe 5 seconds. Then I can adjust from there. If I find they're attacking it pretty well, I can, you know, maybe pause for 3 seconds. I can also change up my cadence. Instead of pop, pop, I can add a pop, pop with a pause and a third pop, and then let it sit. So mess with the cadence, but the most important thing with a suspending jerkbait is as you work it in between, you don't want that jerkbait to move. So as it moves, in that split second while you're pausing it, or 5 seconds, you want it to just sit there doing nothing. And I would say 90% of the bites you're going to have are, as it's just sitting there, you're going to maybe see your line move, or the next time you go work it, you're going to find a fish on there. So it's really in that pause that really just aggravates those fish, and they just have to eat it. Now, as far as colors, I don't get super crazy about it. You know, if you've got like bluegill and opaque, something like this is a good all around. Depending on water clarity, like if I have a little bit dirtier water, remember it is mostly a sight fishing bait, so you want those fish to be able to see it. Something clear like this is one of those rogues, kind of a clear pearl, or this one, this is a Thunderhawk. When old Chief Dove sent me this one, pretty cool one, in that ghost minnow, real clear, natural looking, or on sunny days, a silver or a gold, something that's gonna give a flash off. But the biggest thing with this is just get out. I know a lot of bank fishermen don't like treble hooks. They get scared of them hanging up and stuff. But with a jerkbait like this time of year, when we don't have a bunch of grass and stuff growing up, it's an excellent time to get out there and work it. Let's move on to number 3. Lure number 3 is the good old spinnerbait. Why the spinnerbait, you might ask, Debo? In spring, we don't have all that vegetation growing up it. You know, you think chatterbaits, they're good in kind of open water, grass. Spinnerbaits don't do well that time of year when you've got a bunch of gunk and moss and stuff. Early spring, we don't have that. The other thing that's really nice about a spinnerbait is you can really hit a bunch of different things and slow that spinnerbait down. So if it's still really cold water like now, I could really creep this along the bottom, you know, hit the tops of rocks, hit the type of, you know, stuff that's down there, whatever you've got. If you've got, you know, stumps or whatever, you can fish around vertical timber. Awesome lure for that. You can fish it under docks, you know, anything that might hold fish. You can speed it up toward the top if fish are, you know, starting to get a little bit more active and chasing bait. It's a versatile do-it-all lure. There's a reason this caught so many fish back in the day, and it mimics bait. So, you know, as it's leading up to spawn and fish are feeding up, or post-spawn, you know, still in the spring, this mimics a little tiny ball of bait fish. Really, if you cover all this up, it's just a swim jig, right? If you add this wire and a couple blades to it, now you've got a spinnerbait. So, you know, a lot of people say, again, I hear bank anglers say, oh, I'll just throw a chatterbait. It's better in every condition. I beg to differ. You know, dirtier water, there's a number of different blade combinations you can get with this. This is the double willow. That's what I throw a lot of the time. But you can get into like the Booyah here with a larger Colorado blade. Great for that cold water when you're just running it slow. It's got a good hard thump to it. You've got larger willow blades. You've got hammered to give reflection. A bunch of different ones you can use. And these are some of my favorites. Booyah, the covert is awesome. And for bank fishing, I really like that little compact version. The War Eagle, Screaming Eagle, they've got a bunch. There's like the River Rat one too. The new ones that First Gen came out with, again, the compact version, I think these are going to be sweet. Strike King has a number of good ones. This is the like the tournament grade one or whatever. It's only like $7. They came out with it a couple years. Good components on it. I really like those, hand tied. I think it's one of the best bang for the buck spinners out there. And again, you can get little 5/16 finesse. Now for colors on the spinnerbait, if I could only pick one, it would probably just be an all white. Close second would be like a white and chartreuse. You've kind of got to tailor it to the water you're in. You know, white is great in all types of water conditions. A little bit of chartreuse is great when you've got the stained water. Again, smaller blades gives less vibration if you've got really dirty water, maybe a little bit brighter like this one. It's got that orange head for fish to hone in on. It's got the larger Colorado blade to thump. So you can kind of mix it up how you want. There's not a right or wrong way. I know some people that only fish a tandem with like a big willow, small Colorado. There's some people that swear by just one big Colorado blade, slow rolling it. A number of different ways you can do it. You got to find what works for you, but I tend to just keep it simple. If you're looking for a couple white and chartreuse. Post spawn, I will tell you, a huge, like, maybe it's not a secret, but something that used to be amazing and still is, but I don't hear people talk about it much anymore, is throwing a bluegill spinnerbait with gold blades post spawn. Bass are moving back. You know, they've already spawned. They're trying to eat, you know, find stuff. Well, guess what? Bluegill are up spawning. They're going to come pick on them and destroy them, eat their babies. It's payback time for the bluegill pestering them. So a bluegill spinnerbait that time of year is awesome. Now, the last thing for spinnerbaits is I said you can slow roll them and, you know, depending on your water temperature. But as spring starts to move, you know, those temperatures up, let's see, we're getting toward, you know, that 55 degree. I'm really just keeping that spinnerbait just out of sight down in the water. So if I've maybe got 2 foot of visibility, I'm just under that to where I've lost that spinnerbait. Again, I want to keep it above the fish, but I'm trying to keep it down enough where it's kind of out of my sight. That's where I tend to have the best luck with it. You can fish it, you know, within a foot of the surface, especially if they're really active and hitting up there. But I would say just a moderate speed to start out with. And don't be afraid to put pops into your rod. So as you're reeling it, giving them little pops, or just stall it for a second so the spinnerbait's going, kind of falls. Any type of that you can put into it really will cause those fish to react. And when you're fishing around cover, rocks, wood, hit it. Hit it with the spinnerbait, make it react, make it flutter, because again, all those little, discombobulated things on there look like a little bait ball. So don't be afraid to hit stuff. Don't fish 3-4 foot out from your target. Try to fish right next to it. Okay, next up on the list, how do we talk about spring fishing without throwing in a lipless crankbait or a rattle trap like this? The first lipless crank I ever threw was this, and a lot of people will refer to all lipless crankbaits as a rattle trap, which is actually the Bill Lewis brand. Bill Lewis rattle trap, this one, obviously made famous by that little fin, kind of that diamond shape to it. This is a Bill Lewis rattle trap. There's a ton of different other ones on the market. Some of my favorites are Cotton Cordell Super Spot, not expensive. You don't have to be worried about losing these. I love that purple color. Booyah makes the one knocker and hard knocker. This is that new graffiti craw, kind of an opaque belly with that flashy top. The always popular red eye shad. This is a little 1/4 ounce, and that gold sexy shad is, that's one of the secrets around here. Also these in 1/2 ounce, and usually I start with 1/2 ounce. If you notice a lot of small bait around or the fish are being a little picky, I'll downsize. Also the Spro Aruku shad. A lot of these that I'm using are burning shallow, fishing aggressive. So I tend to like these a little bit later. There's usually a window, I would say end of April-ish, if I remember right. We usually have a couple-week window where lipless is absolutely killer. So I'm either yo-yoing that lipless, I'll cast it out and just yo-yo it and let it fall, and let it fall. So it's really doing this, zzz, zzz, and it's rattling on the way up, or I'm fishing it aggressive, shallow. Another way you'll hear people, usually in a boat, fishing it is where they're jigging it. So something with like a Lucky Craft LV500, the Jackal TNs, there's like a 50, 60, 70. A little bit heavier weighted, different profiles, so they're really meant to fall down. So they jig up off the bottom, fall down. Bank fishing, man, you're just begging for some sort of snag, because it doesn't matter where you fish, you're going to find it once you start throwing a lipless on the bottom. If you can get away with it in your area, great, more power to you, do it. But for me, I'm really talking about either yo-yoing it where it's not hitting the bottom, I'm trying to keep it above those fish, almost an alternative to the jerkbait, or I'm just burning that shallow. I'm throwing it and I'm reeling it in. You can throw little pops into it. You can pause it for a second again, but I'm fishing a little bit more aggressive. Another big thing to look out for is when you start to get green grass, vegetation starting in your lakes. There's guys down south that'll rip this through grass, and you hear about, ripping liplesses and doing this type of stuff. But one thing I've noticed, if you have a lake where it tends to get grass, those spots that start to get grass first, bass will definitely, especially if it's on some sort of drop off, will pile up there. And you can zip that lipless right up above them in that grass, just to where it barely gets in it, and you can pop it out of there, let it fall. Man, that is a killer way to do it. And that's also when I'm yo-yoing it. When I've got grass like that, I reel it in. I notice good, green, brand new grass, not old, gross, dying stuff. Focus on those spots that have good green grass. That has been a jackpot for me. And of course, the red color. I don't even think I had one. I've told you that story many times, that I didn't believe in the red. I thought it was stupid. Finally did it. Now it's been a staple every year. So grab some red liplesses early. And also, another thing, I keep adding to it. Mud lines. Man, I've had a number of times where both a spinnerbait and a lipless have been awesome. With spring storms coming in, you'll have trails that look like muddy water, just leaving a line in the water. And it's those mud lines from storms, from wind. It'll churn up all that stuff on the bottom. Oftentimes bass will hide in that and ambush bait. So if you've got mud lines, throw it around that. Good green grass, throw it around that too. But don't be afraid to throw the lipless. Just think of it as any other moving bait, your chatterbait or whatever. Don't be afraid to go out there and fish it aggressive. Okay, last on the list, and certainly not least, how can we talk about spring fishing without a finesse jig? Well, I did for a number of years. It's been, maybe 8 years ago. Started fishing with my buddy Rand Dizzle, and this was like his go-to. He's a jig guy, finesse jig guy specifically, and that's what I want to talk about for us bank anglers, because I think a round ball head, specifically in a 5/16 ounce, is the best bank fishing jig. Now, it doesn't do good in grass. There's other flipping and pitching jigs that are better, but if I'm talking about dragging the bottom, rocky drop-offs, rocky points and stuff, I think it is extremely hard to beat this for bank fishing. Again, 5/16 ounce. I keep the colors pretty natural. Green pumpkin or something like this. This is like a bluegill. I think it's like called pond scum or pond perch, something like that. Kind of natural, light green pumpkin colors. A black and blue June bug, something dark for a silhouette in dirtier water. I don't get too crazy off that. So, find the variation that you like, but a round ball head like this. You could drop to a 1/4. You could go up to 3/8. That's what Rand Dizzle likes. This is actually a War Eagle in the 3/8. This is one that I made, one of my own in a 5/16. Not a bunch of difference, but I get hung up a lot less with a 5/16. Now, the reason I recommend the ball-headed jig is because I hear anglers all the time, I'm not confident in a jig, they get snagged all the time, I can't feel what a bite is. Well, the good thing is once you lock it in your hand and really get used to a jig, you're often going to feel a thump. You know, people talk about jig fishing, feeling that boom. You've got more weight on it. So it's not like, you know, fishing a weightless Senko or, you know, a real light Texas rig where fish will often grab it and just kind of swim away with it and you see your line going. It does happen jig fishing, but a lot of the times you're going to feel that hit, that boom to it because of that extra weight on there. So you're also going to have better hookup ratio. So that's another thing that once you start getting those bites, because it's, you know, well, maybe you don't know, an exposed hook with just a little weed guard on there, once you set that hook and put that past it, you're right in there. So it doesn't have a, you know, a bunch of plastic or anything sliding down to get in the way of it. When you're working the jig, this is what this really took me time, and it's just putting time in with it. I wish I could give you the magic answer, but it's going to be fish it around rock. Slowly fish it to feel, okay, what does big rock feel like? What does small pebble rock feel like? Get to spots where you can see it, where you can see the lure and what it's doing. Throw it out over wood and close your eyes. Okay, it feels kind of a little mushy until I bring it up over it. That's the best way I learned to fish it. Same with a Texas rig. Get to spots where you know there's things there, drag it over it, hit stuff. Once you start to do that, you'll start to notice the difference between a fish biting it and just something there. And the other thing is pause. If you think you have a bite, give it just a little pull and pause. If you feel it back on you, it's a fish. Sticks and rocks and stuff usually don't do that unless there's other things down there, but set the hook. You know, if you think it's a fish, set the hook because hook sets are free. And yeah, if you break off or whatever, hey, tie in a new one. All right, fishing friends, those are my top 5 bank fishing lures. Tell me if I missed one. All right, fishing friends, those are my top 5 spring bank fishing lures. Tell me if your favorite's on there. If not, if you think I really left something out, comment below and let me know. Again, this isn't the only do-it-all list. There's a number of lures you can throw, but these are some that really work for me, especially for bank anglers, because dang it, y'all get forgotten about. There's tons of people with boats and forward-facing sonar and all this crazy stuff. Sometimes you just got to beat the bank. So comment below and let me know. But today, subscribe, fishing friend. I'm going with Zimbass. Just a recent reply on the video that I did unboxing stuff. He said that the cleanup craw, which happens to be the trailer on here, the one that I was least excited about after of the Rapala stuff, and after I got it, I'm like, dang, this thing looks good. Works great as a finesse jig trailer too. On there, he said that he uses that for a punch bait. So yeah, a lot of these will work, you know, trailer, punch bait, Texas rig. But I appreciate him commenting, and I appreciate the heck out of everybody still watching and supporting. It means a ton to me. But that's enough. I gotta edit. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.